So he has
Oh, okay.
start, I guess start dusting first. Okay. Oh, really?
Previously, somebody's been going back on his time sheets and getting hours put down. Hopefully he can get out of that.
So, if they call.
You start.
Right.
We will call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of Stuart Municipal Utilities. The date is October 12th of 2023. The first item on the agenda is the call to order, the roll call, and we'll call the roll. Kim?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Shirley?
Here.
And Craig.
Here.
The next item is the agenda approval and consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the regular meeting of 9/14/23 and the joint meeting of 9/11/23, the financial statement as of 9/30/23, and the bills as presented. If there's any questions about that? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make it. Second.
Moved by Kim, second by Craig. How do you vote, Kim?
Yes.
Brian?
Yeah.
I vote aye. Shirley?
Aye.
And Craig.
Aye.
The next item is a new employee hire. You hired a lineman, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you want to give us a rundown on what you're doing here?
So Hayden Fippen, he's sitting right back there if you want to stand up, Hayden, so everybody can see you. He's from Council Bluffs, and we went through a whole process of getting a lot of resumes from a lot of people. Dustin and I went through 5 interviews, I think, at least. And we thought he would be the best fit. And I called Hayden and he accepted it. He's gonna, if you guys approve him tonight as our new lineman, he'll start November 2nd.
Good, need a motion.
Is there a residency requirement?
Within 15 minutes of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your intent's to move here and?
Yeah.
Okay.
I make a motion.
Moved by Shirley,
Second.
seconded by Brian. How do you vote, Brian?
Yes.
I vote aye. Shirley?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
And Kim?
Yes.
Okay,
He will be paid percent of the current lineman salary, which is $30.60. 90% of that is $27.54. That will be the minimum.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is Snyder and Associates. Yep,
You want to do your pay apps and stuff first, or how do you want to do it?
nope.
You want to talk about first?
We want to talk to you first.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, we left the meeting, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brian.
We left, I wasn't here. I wasn't able to be here. I was out of town. I was on the phone for part of this. And so that could be considered a remedy of this error that was not our fault. And there's been a month that's gone by and there's not been one email, one communication. I had to call you yesterday. You still didn't provide any. No, I'm not done talking. So none of those were shared with any of us, okay? And so I don't know how I can get more frustrated as a utility board member trying to represent utility customers when the error is there and then we try to solve it and there's no information shared in a month. So I guess that's Well, I'd like to.
Okay, well, I don't think that's a fair representation of
I'm sure
what's
you don't.
happened. We'll have to agree to disagree.
Water tower's still screwed up, we don't have options to fix it, that's the fact.
So we have options to fix it. So we have worked with, elevation valve supplier. We've worked with other engineers in our Ankeny office. I've met several times on the phone and or in person with Pat and Ben, trying to, learn their concerns, trying to address the best answer for you. Our company takes our customer service very seriously, and we intend to take care of this elevation valve issue ourselves.
But how do we know that that's the optimal solution for the
Well,
citizens?
I agree. That's our
You can't
job.
agree when you don't share us the facts of what the options are.
Those are coming.
Okay, when? Next month?
You know, there's a whole supply chain issue right here, and I realize in our country, and I realize that this is not itself supply chain, but the people that work on this stuff are slow to respond sometimes. That's out of my control.
Okay, so I emailed this to Ash. This is Schneider's design from 2021, I believe. I think it was May.
That's
Okay,
probably
so
about
that's-
right.
That error is your elevation number from 2 years ago. And supply chain has been lagging for 2 years.
No.
Well, I'm just
That's-
wanting to know.
So that's what was designed,
In error.
but no one knew it was an error until we filled the tower about a month and a half ago.
Okay, and we still are blaming supply chains because that has nothing to do with the options to solve a problem. Supply chains mean that you've picked a solution to solve a problem. That hasn't been picked yet, correct? We don't know what the options are.
We're talking about different companies with different people that we need advice from. We work together all the time on these projects. When you don't get an answer on an email or a phone call in an hour, it takes a week or two often to get your replies. That's what we're talking about.
So Waukee needed to improve their water supply, so they raised the tower.
Correct.
They did pressure zones in West Des Moines. I figured these two options out without calling anybody. I'm not an engineer.
We know those options. What we're
Okay,
trying to do is work together to make sure we have the best option for you. And Pat and Ben assured me that to them, time was less important than a quality solution. That's exactly what they said to me. Now, that doesn't mean,
I'm tired of them being blamed for.
I'm not blaming them
Okay,
for
well, that's what it
anything.
seems
That's
like.
no blame. That's being honest about a conversation.
Okay, so you're talking about doing a valve.
Yes.
So what happens when that valve or something breaks on it? Who's gonna be liable for the maintenance on it? The cost of the maintenance? You guys?
We will be during the warranty period.
No,
At some point
20
in
years
time,
20 years from now. If the
Right.
valve's been
at 20 years
replaced-
from now, if there's a problem, it will be yours. I mean,
Why
that's the way the
should
world
we have
works.
to pay for it when it was not our mistake?
I called an engineer to get an opinion because I never got any communication. What are the alternatives? The one that's recommended is raise the old water tower. Whether that's what we need to do, what we end up doing, or follow through to do, that's what an engineer that deals with this stuff said would be a viable.
And that's what I was told also.
That is an option.
And you guys are liable for the pay of
You've
it.
not suggested that option once.
You guys paid to raise it. You paid for everything to raise that one.
That's out of my hands. I mean, you know darn well I cannot stand here and say yes or no on that kind of.
You need to go back. I feel like you need to go back and you need to talk to your people. And that would be the best option right now to do, because it's not our error. If you put a valve on, 20 years from now it breaks, we're liable. We didn't make the mistake. You guys did. So we should not have, and we should get to pick what we want. That's my feeling.
Understand your feelings.
It's not feelings, they're facts.
I mean, we've put a lot of money out on this water tower,
Understood.
a lot. And why should the town people have to pay extra? I'm one of the town people,
I understand that.
and I don't wanna pay any extra.
I do think there's one clarification. It's not a one-sided error. I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus, it's a communication error, there was some bad data. You make it sound like one side made the error, that is not
Do
true.
you have proof that it was not a one-sided error?
Yes,
You have it written down in
It's your
on
job to
paper.
verify the information that goes in,
I
right?
understand that,
Okay.
that's
Then
why,
don't sit
I
there,
mean-
again, you're
Okay.
blaming our guys. mean,
I
No, I
haven't
don't want
seen
to.
no proof that it's a two-sided error. No proof. I have not seen nothing. I just learned about it at the last meeting.
Mhm.
Like,
So I'm getting what we're told.
Understood,
if we could design and implement engineering plans and build them ourselves, we wouldn't have hired you.
understood,
Okay, so it's your job to own that process. period.
understood, we're trying to.
So that, I mean, I'm not sure what everybody else's feedback is, but that came from an engineer, that recommendation to raise the old water tower. The downside, from what I'm aware of, to put the valve in, long-term maintenance. If the valve fails, the water could freeze, and if it's the winter time, or it could not drain equally. And I'm not sure all of the components that go into that. I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but that's what I was told. So
So for our information, Jeff, what is your warranty period on that valve?
It would be a standard 2-year warranty.
Warranty?
Now, I understand that, I did not come here tonight to ask you to make a final decision. Don't get me wrong about that at all. What I came to do was give you an update on what we've looked at, what we've talked about. Your contractors have completed more good work on both projects. Those pay applications should have approval of those, should have no impact on this error decision. You need to pay what they've done. Having said all that, I wish I would have had a little more idea, because I was led to believe that the two options we're looking at more seriously, which is the elevation valve and the dual zone system, which has some disadvantages as well. I was led to believe that those two alternatives would be acceptable to move forward with our evaluation. Eventually, we will have a full set of drawings on those. We will get quotes and we will get the work done. Raising a tower is obviously an option. It's not one that had been presented back to me that you wanted us to start looking into.
we're trying.
So we can do that.
We're trying to figure out what the options are. We're not
Absolutely.
being given those options. That's the problem. And that's why I felt like I wanted to try to find out some information on my own, how these problems have been resolved in the past.
Understood.
Okay,
I
now,
apologize if you feel it was poor communication. I feel like I communicated well with the Stuart Municipal Utilities people.
my question, when you said the pay thing for tonight,
Right.
that we should go ahead and pay them. Okay, why should we go ahead and pay them? I understand it may not have been their problem, but the work isn't done right. So why should we
The work
approve
that they
that?
did is done right. They did exactly what they were asked to do.
Okay,
Yep. No, I agree with you, Jeff. I mean, the work was done as per the construction documents and specifications that were supplied to them. Doesn't matter if it went with that contractor or one of the other that did. The work was done, completed. My question to that pay application, are there any engineering fees still left in that pay application?
Those are separate. Those are
Okay.
under our invoices. Those are not included in the contractor's fee.
I was gonna say, if those were part of it, I would have asked to separate those and
Yes.
not pay that
They're
part
already
until
separate.
the issue was.
And you have every right to withhold approval of those invoices at your discretion.
Yeah, but no, I feel the contractor, I mean, they've done the work that they were hired to do as their knowledge of the construction documents presented to them. So I don't think there should be any reason to not pay our contractors. They did the work properly to their
Absolutely.
specifications.
So moving on to that for just a second. Both projects are very near completion. Water mains are all in, most of the services are in. When we had our meeting last week, they said they should be done in 2 or 3 weeks. So that means 1 or 2 weeks from now, they'll have all the services in. They still need to go back and do cleanup and seeding and things like that, a little pavement patching. That project should be completed, well before winter. The water tower side, they're waiting on some controls. There's some final pieces. It's functioning fine as far as operating in tandem with your other tower. We still need to obviously improve the air, but as far as functionality, what's there is there. The controls will just give them the ability to see what's going on from the treatment plant. And so that part is not quite finished, and that's the part that's not paid yet. So,
How much retainage do we have?
5%.
I agree with Craig, on the invoice side. I mean, it's not that it's not even work probably related to the tower that's being completed and it was done per spec, right? So.
Have some options tonight, Jeff?
My options were what we've already talked about, to tell you what we have learned about the elevation valve and what we have learned about the dual zone. Having talked to Ben and Pat this morning, they gave me some new questions. I'm following up on those. I don't have those answers yet. But that was the update I had for tonight. Now, obviously, I need to go back. I need to talk to some people to look into this option of raising this tower. We can do that.
I'm not saying that's the right option. I'm just
I know.
saying until we actually are able to review options. and
Absolutely.
I apologize. I don't mean to get so frustrated, but the only way that we know we can rectify this is by knowing what the options are.
Absolutely, I
So
get
that's
that.
what I was anticipating after the last meeting.
Mhm.
Not getting it, I'm obviously not gonna be
And
happy.
I guess my understanding was I would present that here tonight, and I misunderstood that I would have it beforehand for your review.
That's just one. I'm looking at what are the total options, because to me, those are Band-Aids. A 2-year warranty on a valve, a pressure zone, all requires more labor costs or more maintenance costs, which we didn't pay for. We didn't ask for and we don't want. I guess I don't know. That's just.
Well, there are many communities that do operate pressure zones, so it's a choice to look at. But
West
you're right,
Des Moines
we
did
need
that.
to
West
evaluate.
Des Moines did that to solve their problem. Their town is obviously a lot larger than ours. Other towns our size that have.
Yes,
pressure zones?
absolutely. Atlantic has 2, Neola has 2. It's not that unusual.
But I don't think that's something that, Ben, that's not something you recommend, correct? Or you're not wanting to deal with because of the other costs and additional work, right? That's not how it was designed.
From a maintenance standpoint, if they're both the same elevation, that it's the easiest.
Would be the
Yes,
easiest.
overall.
No argument there, that was the goal.
To me, it goes back to raising the other tower unless there's other alternatives that are presented.
Can that tower be raised?
Possible. It's not without difficulty, obviously.
And we have to be concerned about what the age of the tower is, what that can do to it, raising at that time. And devil's advocate, I mean, that tower's got 10, 20 years of life into it before we'll look at placing it. You know, so that atmospheric valve could be more than that.
No, that tower could have lots of life left.
Could have lots of life,
more
okay.
life than that.
I mean, devil's advocate, in the end, that valve wouldn't be a permanent solution where we'd be looking at maintaining for the life of the town of Stuart. I mean, eventually, when that
Exactly right.
tower is replaced, we will abandon that valve and the new tower would be built at a matching elevation with the now existing tower. So, I mean, that's one thing we do have to keep in mind. If that is the final solution, it won't be
Right.
a lifelong option that we have to live with.
So this tower was $2 million, right?
That's right.
That's before the interest is paid back. So let's just call it 3 time value money, 3.5. Okay, it's a 40-year bond, so maybe up to 4. So if you factor this thing, that's got 40 years of life. Let's just say it's worth 75% of that value because it's not as big, right? It still costs the same money as difference, the dome on top. So that's the type of damage to me that we're talking about by trying to, cut corners with solutions that I'm not willing to, even consider. That's just, I don't know. It's like when you have your sump pump in your basement and you hope the power doesn't go out or the battery backup doesn't. It's just, that's the kind of thing I get in my mind when I hear about how those work, so.
Well, the other thing that I think we need to think about that over 20 years could end up being substantial is that because we're having or going possibility of adding additional equipment onto that, we're gonna have to insure it for over those years. So, I think we need to look not only at maintenance, but how much is it gonna cost us to insure it for the extra amount for 20 years. So, board members, any other comments or questions?
About that specifically, no. I do have a question about
Go
the
ahead.
water line project. So we still have the seeding and the groundwork that's left to clean up. Are there any concerns with getting as late we are in the year about seeding that?
Yes, the contractor would be expected. It's been a dry year. Undoubtedly, there will be settlement on trenches over the winter. and they would be expected to come back in the spring to take care of some of those issues. So we can work through that when we get to a final pay application. There's a couple choices for you for that. You can either withhold a part of the retainage, or you can, if you trust your contractor, you can hold them under the warranty. I've seen councils do it both ways.
Okay, Jeff, I've checked with an engineer as well. And his response is that this was your responsibility to verify the height of those tubes. Nobody else, doesn't matter who told you what or what information you got,
And we felt we did,
but in the end, that's your responsibility.
no argument.
And we're looking at getting our water system to be what our ratepayers have paid for.
Absolutely.
And I don't think we're gonna be happy to settle with anything less. So that's what you need to keep in mind as you put together some options here. And we've talked about a couple, we actually added an option here tonight. So keep in mind that our ratepayers, not just us, but our customers are looking to get what they paid for.
Absolutely.
And I think the board members would agree with that. So, if you get some information, please refer it back to Pat or Ben,
I'll
so that
continue
we
to
can
do
get brought into the loop as well.
I will continue to keep them in the loop.
So,
Could we have a special meeting if we need one?
absolutely.
We're gonna have one here very soon.
No, I mean over this.
Yeah,
Just make it part of it. We just meet early.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, whenever he's ready,
I mean,
we can be ready.
What you're saying, the 26th, can we just meet earlier?
We could
Yeah,
do
if he's
that.
ready, yeah, that's what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, if he's ready, we're ready.
If there's,
We'll talk about that.
have you ever been involved in raising or lowering an existing tower?
No, not personally.
I just didn't know how common it was. Joaquin did do that, this engineer actually did that, but I just didn't know how common that is. It's got to mean you're disturbing an existing structure, that can't
I
be.
don't think it's too common from what I've heard.
So I don't know what the downsides of that are, if there are, there might. If there are a list of options for us to consider with cost
Absolutely.
estimates next to them, well, I guess the cost is irrelevant, but the way that they're,
Functionality is my point right now.
as we expected.
Yes.
Let me know, Jeff, when you're done, and when you're ready to.
Yeah,
present.
I have to go to conference next week. I'll be out all week.
Okay, we're gonna have a special meeting the week after. If you're ready at that time, that'll be fine. If not, we can schedule something that
Okay,
based on you available.
I'll check with some people tomorrow and see what I can pull together.
Sure.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
PNC.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay,
Six PNC.
next item is, you want to do both together?
Yes.
6B is a pay app for tall well tanks. 6C is the pay app for rate planners. If you,
The motion.
I'll make a motion.
motion by Craig, is there a second?
1 second.
Second by Brian. How do you vote? Shirley?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
Kim?
Yes.
Brian? And I vote aye. So item number 7 is DGR wind turbine generation. Another engineer.
Boy, I don't think I can cut it, guys.
And one from South Dakota State, no
Well,
less.
I'm a South Dakota boy.
Let's get
I might retreat there after this meeting.
No,
I don't
no,
know.
doesn't seem.
It is, right? So I'm here again. You probably long forgot about what we talked about. I didn't get my cords here plugged
You
up.
can go ahead now.
Okay, so I'm not seeing the cord here. Just a few numbers I want to. Sorry about that. I'm not here at the time. It's gonna be short though, I promised Pat. It was
Thank you.
I'm happy with my previous presentations. How long they went, don't blame us. All right, here we go. Okay. I'm waiting for that guy, but you guys can see this is good for you. Okay. All right, Jared Lucy, DGR Engineering. I'm gonna make a quick disclaimer. We don't do the wind turbines, it's not my wind turbine, you put it in, but DGR, I'm just thinking of a big sticker on a wind turbine.
So you said your water tower.
I'm like, no, we're
How about
working
if
on
we put a jackrabbit on it? Did that satisfy you?
Yeah, you see what we can, I'm basically here to follow up on what it amounts to electric system improvements for Stuart Municipal. I guess essentially, just a little background, we completed the study here in spring of '23, and then provide our capital improvement recommendations. You're like, hey, what are the cost implications? Followed up with Blair, our rate guy, the president of our firm, does our rate studies. He looked at the rate impacts, and we came back sometime in July, I think, Pat, with some of those somewhat alarming figures that, not great, right? So since then, I guess Pat met with you folks, as you do regularly, and he had some questions about wind turbine generation. Currently, you have a 660 kW unit out there, and you see essentially deferred energy cost savings, right? So you don't have to buy whatever that's producing from a kilowatt hour, okay? So did a little work. We're not in the wind generation development field, so I did have to reach to one of our developer contacts who we're working with on other stuff, but
Actually, builds, constructs.
yeah, and I'll have a little bit more on that, but yes, they develop, they're essentially wind turbine plants aren't really initiated typically. It's developer based, and then there's an agreement that's worked out after it's developed and built out, etc. So reached out to them with some high level figures, but we just needed some walking around numbers just to kind of get in front of you quick and dirty, so you guys would have an idea of what's going on there. So right out of the gate, I guess, just as I mentioned, your current unit is 660 kW. The city owns that, and you have an agreement with the city to essentially work that out and get deferred cost benefits, so you don't have to buy it from SIPCO and SIPCO with it. What I did learn is that essentially the days of like small wind turbines at the utility scale, not talking like residential where you have those little spinners, 25 kW, et cetera. But in terms of utility scale of what like a municipal or a investor owned or something, they don't make them that small anymore. They make them, the smallest is 2.8 megawatts, and that's a GE unit. And this is from the developer, so I'm kind of trusting his word a little bit. But just kind of the walking around numbers here, he gave me basically between 6 to 7 million for one of those wind turbines. So, and a lot of that is because they only do big wind turbines anymore, is because the economies of scale, and they'll do 50 to 100 of those. And so you have this crane just walking around erecting these huge, wind turbines. So, back in the day, get an egg, and I'm sure you could maybe, shake the trees and find somebody that still does it. But to my knowledge and to the folks that we're familiar with, they don't make them that small. So essentially what you run into is we did some kind of rough calcs with, we're aware of the investment tax credits, the ITC federal program, essentially, that you get about a 30% initial cost credit, I guess, for it. So you gotta build it, borrow the money essentially, build it, and you get 30% cost back. Based on the literature, it was a little foggy, and if you could do that and the production tax credit, I read some stuff where it looked like you might have to do one or the other, but anyway, long story short, I mean, by the time you get one of these things built, you're talking about a 15 to 20 year payback to recoup what you got into it. That's with the current 6.2 cents, and that's bound to change, I'm sure, at some point, but just rough figures. And I just thought I'm like, hey, what's the average life cycle of these things? 15 to 20 years. So by about the time you get it paid off, all bets are off on it. You don't really know when you're gonna replace it. Maybe goes longer, 30 years, but long story short, it's kind of
I think this one is just about 20 years old.
Yeah.
I think it is, talking to Pat, that's what he mentioned, so, anything right now is just money in the bank and keep writing it out.
And they're probably throwing those numbers out because they haven't been around that long, so they're giving an expectancy to be,
And
somewhat
it
conservative.
depends on who you're talking to. You're talking to wind people, they say 20 to 30, but when you look at actual installed wind turbine generation, it's somewhere in between. Just kind of some information for you guys. The other thing, I did visit with SIPCO to see, hey, if we have a utility, what's the limitations here? You're limited to 10% of your peak. So, the 2.8 is not gonna work. It wouldn't work in that purchase power agreement. It would have to go through the city and through the PERPA.
Same way we did on the last.
Yep, and through the PERPA, Federal Approval Process, Power Freedom Act, or whatever that PERPA means. I don't really know. The acronym of soup kind of gets me. But anyway, it would need to go through that process, and it's a process. So
So the 2.8, what is that relative to? What type of time period?
the 2.8,
It generates 2.8 megawatts over.
that's just the instantaneous power that it generates. And so
What's that relative to our consumption, the city? I mean,
A lot of days we're not using more than that, but when it's hot out, we're way over that.
yeah, so your peak is 3.8. I think
It is.
this year. I think your average monthly peak is somewhere in like 1.6, 2, somewhere in there, Pat.
Probably in the 2 range.
2, I think. Okay, so that would well surpass your peak, and so that being said,
But when we're
It's-
hitting our peak load in the summer, the winds gotta be blowing.
that's what I was gonna say. It's like it's all relative to the
It's
weather
no
too.
good to
Yeah.
us. If the
Yeah,
winds
so
not
it's-
blowing.
So on the cost, you're at seven-ish million, you take, what, 2 million off of that for tax credits, maybe?
yeah, something like
I mean,
that. So
do you have this, can you email this, or is this?
yeah, I can get you the rough figures. It's in a spreadsheet.
So you take that off of that, and, you're gonna pile it back on by the time you pay back with interest.
Yeah. It includes your average O&M costs, what you're averaging now. It does not include like what the bond structure would look like, because you'd still have to borrow that money
Yeah.
and then fund it. So I can give you the rough numbers, and then you smarter than me about it.
No, it's
They
just,
can have that.
it's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually a fun exercise to do there. I don't want to burn up my time.
Jared, I'm curious
Yeah, go ahead.
that the smallest is a 2.8.
Yeah.
This is a 6.6. I think it cost us, we had a grant, but I think the whole thing was like $1 million.
Right, it's a 0.6.
Point six, yeah.
0.66.
So, but and now the minimum they build is a 2.8. Is that, I mean, the fact that they don't build anything smaller than that, is that an efficiency thing?
Yes, it's a scale thing. However, I have seen articles too where because they're so big, they're running into issues they didn't foresee. So there's all kinds of crazy things going on out there with that, but you'll see a lot of 1.5s like the ones you drive by and you see in Northwest Iowa, et cetera. Some of those I think are between 1 and 2.
But they don't put it the same long.
It doesn't sound like it, no. According to our developer friend, he said this is the smallest out there. And again, that's utility scale. I bet there's a drop off to like super small, and I bet you could still do those, but they're kind of more residential, the ones you see, and those are, between, 10 to maybe 50 kW, a lot of those. So, they're more looking at just like the houses stuff. So, yeah.
You work with a ton of communities, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so do you work with any that have a utility company that provides, not exclusive wind turbine power, but has a higher contribution of wind or solar relative to the total consumption?
It's not common. So you go down to Greenfield, I think they have two that are interconnected.
I got that solar plant out there. Are you aware of that or familiar with that at all?
See, and so much of that is private developer base. A lot of what we get involved in is just getting the connections to it. And so I'm not great, I'm not a great
No, that's fine.
resource
I
there.
don't know.
But what we're seeing actually, just on a side note, is that for the smaller scale, for the smaller scale installations, it's trending towards solar. Wind is, it sounds like it's kind of on the out, it kind of peaked there. And then now, for what, I think it's cost implications, it's just so costly.
Sure.
Concrete's doubled, steel is doubled, solar takes up more of a footprint. There's a guy doing an in-depth solar analysis on small scale from like 150 to 500 kW installations, which would kind of be more of what you would look at. And he was having trouble coming up with a payback better than like 30 years on a 500 kW solar farm.
So 30-year payback.
30-year, and it needs 3.2 acres, and that doesn't include the purchase of the land, and it doesn't include O&M on the solar. So a lot there. Did a little bit of homework here for the last month, kind of trying to get prepared for this. But I didn't want to follow up on this capital improvements plan without touching on that because I know that it was brought up and it was important. So, any other questions on the wind turbine side of things?
No, thank you for the facts.
Okay, gonna humor me a little bit here. Wind turbine continued. The one thing that I understand where you guys are coming from, we got a nice situation with that existing wind turbine. But when I look and revisit our system study, the wind turbine wouldn't address our deficiencies there or the needs of you guys long term. Just wanted to say, generation is not your guys' weak point.
Yeah.
So you guys are in a good position generation wise. Our generation, we kind of years just as a ballpark figure for you guys. I just wanted to let you know that we would interpret your guys' generation position with your local gen at the south sub there, plus your wind turbine. That's a good situation. A lot of communities aren't in. So I did want to just mention that don't feel like you need to, beef up your generation assets or anything. What I did kindly, if I could, before I leave, is, talking with Pat, he mentioned he did hit a new peak here in September, and I think it was over 3.8 megawatts. And so, as you look at this chart here, we kind of pegged you guys for about 3.6 this last year, and so you're actually kind of ahead of the projected loads. What I wanted to just reiterate is that we've established the north substation. We've reestablished that tie through a contractor came in and established. There's going to be some relay testing they have to do to make sure that gear is functional, etc. on the protection side of things. But that tie there is good up to about 4.1 meg. And what that tie does is it enables, if something happens to the south sub switchgear, that tie is critical to backfeed your town. Because if the south sub switchgear goes, you don't have generation, you don't have essentially any power to the town without that tie being adequate. So I really just wanted to reemphasize that point, and that if there's anything you address here, it probably should go towards, not saying that take the wind stuff and run with it as much as you can. If there's grants out there, I'm not totally wise on that. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate where we're at, and then you said the peak bumped up a little bit more than what we're thinking. You guys are one fast charger away on the interstate of having some problems, both on your distribution system, but especially being sole source from the south up to 41. That says 4,100 megawatt. That is wrong. It's 4.1 megawatt. That's a typo. That looks ridiculous. Sorry about that. Essentially, I just wanted to reiterate that you guys are actually seeing really good growth for small communities based on your location of the interstate, proximity to Des Moines. It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem if we don't try to make some headway on those improvements. Real quick, I'm day late and a dollar short here on time, but again, our phase one improvements we're recommending are at the north sub. We had talked about alternative discussing with Pat, we'll try to make so there are some transmission costs you can refrain from having to contribute. Essentially, we do need to scope that out if you do choose to act at some point in the future here, near term. We would like to really do a detailed scope. We need to figure out what is underneath the ground, just west of the existing sub. There's some preliminary things that need to be in place before you guys can act on these when the time comes, which we would recommend soon. But as you know, it has rate implications. So we understand that. We just want to make sure that it stays on your guys' mind. Real quick, I just wanted to touch on, we're prioritizing. I have 3 phases of projects called out here that 1 and 2 are the important ones. So forget about phase 3 for now. It's not important. Focus on phase 1 and 2 is your priorities on the distribution system. I've got hardbound reports. You guys I'm going to leave these with Pat, but they're hardbound reports. They have all the details, so you guys can make notes, ask questions additionally.
Is there a cash flow model in there? A rate study that would show the implication?
The full out rate study's not there, but Blair can get you that information. That's not in
Who's
this. Blair Metzger is the president.
And he was the one that was here before.
Yes,
Okay.
he was here with me the last time, and he kind of spilled the beans on the rates, right?
Well, yeah.
So where we're at is that in the preliminary phase, we're gonna try to whittle down on what these high level estimates are. Okay, we need a preliminary phase to eliminate potential issues that are in this contingencies of these are conservative numbers, okay? These are set up to where you're surprised when you get the project done and it's a good surprise, okay? A preliminary planning phase would allow us to drill into the details a little bit and get hard numbers, and so your rates are really truly identified. What we included were essentially high level rates. So, in 2018, we said rates at this time would be about 14.7 cents. It actually only needed to be 13.9 cents. So we're about a cent off per kilowatt hour. Just because we're conservative by nature, we don't want to set you up to where you're not getting enough revenue, and then it's a problem. So that's how we operate. And so when Blair and I come in here with these are what the rate impacts are, that's high level estimates, and it's just to get the ball rolling. But we really do need to do in-depth analysis on that, and just if a certain rate increase is acceptable, we can see what design alternatives we can fit in there to fit that acceptable rate. So
Jared, are you recommending that we put this upgraded substation in a different location than where it's at now?
So the north sub there by the plant, we had talked about alternative spots. We kind of had some pot shotted some areas that we thought might work, and they kind of fell through. Looking at the north sub, Pat and I think we could make it work there.
Jamming in.
Expand the site a little bit till we can, because the city owns that property, or the municipal does. They own the property. We can expand the fence. It'll minimize the transmission infrastructure. Transmission's not cheap. We probably had $100,000 there for transmission mods. Anyway, we think we could save some costs there.
So we can use some of that equipment that's there?
Yeah, there's some, like the dead end structure, for example. I mean, there's ways that we could utilize that. It's an old lattice style, but if we look at the foundations of structural assessment, and we say apparent cracks, so we would just need to confirm they're okay. Something like that, that might be $50,000 right there.
So it's not 5 million.
Right, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right?
Yeah.
Death by 1,000 cuts. So all we can do is just work on that. What I'm afraid is if we don't get going on any preliminary design, you're gonna see another round of these grants come out. We're getting wiser on how to take opportunity of those. If you have kind of a plan ready, and you do here to start with, if we drill down in the details and maybe work on what kind of rates we can get down for you guys, what I'm asking for is your guys' approval to do preliminary design on this, so.
And that was the proposal we had a couple months ago.
Yeah.
right?
Yep, and I totally get it, it's, came in here with the increase on rates. In 5-10 years, who knows what rates are gonna look like, so.
So what, we've got a couple other things we talked about for our budget meeting in January. So, I mean, Ash, what do you recommend that we do with this as a priority? Pat, you looked at all this, you're in agreement, I mean,
I am, because honestly, if we don't do it now, we're gonna have to do it later, and it's gonna cost more. This has to be done if we continue to grow.
And how much is this gonna cost?
it's up to, I mean, phase one was.
The preliminary.
The preliminary.
Oh,
Yeah, the preliminary, so preliminary design for the north sub work, okay? It's an hourly, $35,000. Might be less than that, might be, it shouldn't be more than that, it's a safe
And
assumption,
that would be this task order 7
right?
that we.
Task order 7, and essentially, we gotta do some soil borings north of the sub, the west of the existing sub. We gotta work with Pat, backhoe out, see what's underground there, there could be anything underground there. Make sure the site,
And and you guys jump in, how does Chip runs the cash flow projections for the water fund, does he not do that for the electric, or is that?
Oh,
He does, okay.
I'm pretty sure it's shit.
The reason I ask is this not relevant to deciding in January when we do our budget? And consider it at that point, so we can take into account, these additional revenue sources, hopefully we can get something out of that, and we, through, that contribution as well, we have kind of a list going.
Jared, how soon would you like this preliminary?
As soon as you guys are good with it. I just don't want it to fall off. I don't want Pat to talk to me in 3 years and then we got a problem.
It's just a
So
planning thing,
it's planning,
so Ash will tell us, or tell me anyway, that.
It's fine to talk about it in January, when we talk about the budget,
okay,
and it would be considered.
okay. The task order 7 for the preliminary.
But the
Okay.
electric fund currently is not a large surplus to try to
No, it's
do ad hoc
not.
spending.
It's not.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting at, that's why we need that time to.
You bet. And I totally understand and
Is that
different, that'll be here before we know it. So
Yeah.
for us, that's fine. I just wanna keep, I don't wanna be pushy, but I don't want us to,
No, be pushy, because there's a lot at stake here, Jared, and if we fail or falter to do this, we're gonna find ourselves in big trouble when we can't provide power to our customers.
it said some communities where there's zero growth, we just plug something in, not as concerned. Here, you guys are seeing the growth. You set a new peak this last year. It's happening. You're on I-80. They're talking fast chargers and they really wreck stuff. So, anyway, that's all I really had. I appreciate you guys listening to me again. We'll talk later. I can talk about getting the financial model. We can
That'd be
just
great.
wait on it too,
Yeah.
or whatever. I'll talk to Pat about getting you guys some information on the rates and things like that, so.
And so that 5 million, that phase 1
Yeah.
that you had.
Yep.
Do you have like an outline of what all that would include, and
Yep.
maybe you share that?
Yeah, I got it detailed, it's
Okay.
probably more detailed.
Well, just to try to
Yep.
understand, what the weaknesses are and how that's fixed and all that, I don't know.
Yep.
My vocabulary, it's not my bag.
Yep, I got the details for you. Yeah, and things are it's just crazy what things are costing anymore, so.
Jared, I think we are moving rapidly to begin this process, but I think once we get into our budget situation here early next year, I think you'll find that we will approve this and begin the work very rapidly on that, so.
Okay, no, that sounds good, guys. Again, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I've got copies of the report here, got 10 copies. Feel free to reach out with any other questions and, we'll go from there. So, thanks, guys.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Come right back.
Is photograph books.
We've got already in at 20 hours.
It's crazy. It's crazy, these costs the last 2 years. Yeah, you're just making each correct. And honestly, like.
I know I have to talk, so we're just gonna figure out how we change the budget.
Totally get it.
Places online, yeah. I just started understanding that insurance. I already know. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think we don't want to say that for so long. Nobody's on just. Yeah, keep talking about it. I'll find somewhere.
I did not know.
Okay. Well, it was.
Anyway, whatever.
You say, you know, somebody, that's too late. This is all. That's right. They got big ass cranes at this.
So much more.
We're looking for a house.
Yeah, it's fine.
We're building out the northeast part. Free lot.
Yeah, like $300,000 to build a house.
Make that right.
Sure.
Yeah, so they have a lot of.
That's okay, I'm not.
You guys are used to it. You guys are tax exempt on certain things. There's a corporation, they're.
Okay.
So every bit of tax, so, yeah. The other thing is they have, being the big utility providers, they actually have corporate green initiatives that drive a lot of it, whereas it doesn't need to make sense financially. So, you know, it's interesting.
Oh, there's.
Okay. Yeah, there's some big.
Don't worry, Amber, thank you. That's
Yeah. Okay.
She was.
I agree.
Agenda item number 8 is a proposed letter of engagement with Allergy Cooney from the joint meeting request.
Last joint meeting, we came to the conclusion to get the price of the stuff that Brian, myself, Mike, and Craig working on. We received that the letter of engagement, you have it in your packet, just like advised. At the council meeting, we tabled item. Good.
Yeah, we did one call with this attorney that specializes in, wind and solar, gas, that type of thing. In a nutshell, and, the cameras were involved in that, the site ready, all of those things from that joint meeting. And we kind of left it that I'm not sure that we need to do anything with that engagement letter yet. I'm not sure what the right answer is going to be with this. He didn't close the door. this guy didn't close the door, but it evolved. I think where Ashley kind of recommended is let Chip lead this and pull in people where he needs to. So we can approve the engagement letter. There's no risk if we do that unless Chip calls him, then he's gonna bill us. But, or, another attorney, however that works, I don't know, but it was not favorably, just in a nutshell. Cameras are fine. The solar was more positive. The wind thing, you kind of heard the same thing. What was his name?
Jared.
He was a short guy. Same story from him, and the gas was he recommended doing a gas tax, a franchise tax, which is already in place.
Yes.
So, we should put that in the minutes so people know what we've kind of, discussed, looked at. But anyway, Chip asked, he couldn't have a consulting agreement ready for the 26th to discuss this further, so he asked for a joint meeting between the two groups to kind of figure out where we're going next.
That will be on the 26th.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, there's no point in approving that.
The council table it, if the board doesn't mind, we can table it until we get to that joint meeting on the 26th.
I think that's fine. I also think that we may be leaving a resource on the table here, Brian. There's a lot of experience, not only city staff, but on our utility staff. And they talk to other people all the time from other municipal utilities that are in our same situation. And that's difficult because there's only about 70 communities in Iowa that are structured the way we are. But I think they can help us come up with ideas within our own system that we can gain some efficiencies and maybe even some other sources of revenue. I don't want to discount what our own city staff and our utility staff can provide for us, because there's a lot of knowledge there. They've been doing this stuff many more years than I have, and know so much more about it. So give them a shot at this too, because I think we'll be surprised what we come up with here. So
The only thing I wanted to mention, if you guys drive 3 miles south and 2 or 3 miles back east, there are 2 80-acre farms that have, I tried to read about, this attorney said solar's being considered by a lot of communities. So I'm like, okay, you always try to find a town that's doing something that's cool so you can try to copy it, right? If it works. And so this one's called like the Greenfield Solar something, and I haven't gotten any documentation on it, but anyway, in this intersection, there are literally 2 80-acre sections with these solar panels, that's all, and these farms are flat as, so they took them out of production and put these plants in, it's called Greenfield Solar something, but I'll get some information on between now and the next meeting, but.
when we go east to Virginia, when we travel by car east to Virginia, you get out into Indiana, especially Indiana and Ohio, there's solar arrays there, acres and acres and acres of solar array out there. So somebody's seeing some value in that.
Yeah, and I don't know, he said this is a 30-year payback, and it's like.
Yeah.
Whether you find out, it had to work to do it, so, you just.
Well, the other thing, playing devil's advocate again, the other thing you need to realize when you begin to start new ventures within our utility company is going to require more hires. We're going to have to hire more people, and the startup costs are going to be substantial. So all that needs to come together. And I appreciate very much having the cost of the attorneys that we would ask to work on this, but to look at that, you can, that attorney can raise a lot of money in a big hurry.
Absolutely. So that's why if Chip kind of leaves that, he's going to have a business perspective or something's going to work. He'll also know the cash flows of water and electric and try to see the efficiencies on that side. So if we can do that. It just bothers me. And I know you probably, again, you got Xenia kicking you, and then you got Sipco kicking you, and we can't kick back. And so it's just trying to create additional revenue source that we have to be able to,
The scary thing with water, in the first place, we all know that we do better with electric than we ever would with water. And the scary thing about water, if you've been reading much of about what's happening with water in our state. There was a story this morning in the Register where up near Waterloo, there's a small community up there, got their, or maybe you heard about this, Craig, there's a small community up there who would get their water from an aquifer that was fed by a small river that goes by. The river dried up. The same thing is happening up in Osceola County. Small town up there is having to ration its water because their source is drying up, their well is drying up. And to me, that's scary. I mean, we got communities whose water sources are drying up, and that's never been heard of in this state. And what's really scary about it, and I'm on my soapbox, and you people can throw rocks at me if you want to, but if our state government, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, if our state government does not get busy and figure out a way to clean up the water in this state, we're gonna be in a lot worse shape than we are now. And that's where a lot of this, you know, they can sit in there and reduce taxes all they want, and they act like heroes when they do that. But where the rubber meets the road, when our people need more water and cleaner water, and we have to pay to clean it up, we're the dunces. We're the ones who get chewed out for that. But, so I've been on my soapbox, I'll get off of that.
The only other thing that, the power agreement, Pat, Chip may need that, the Sipco power, where, is that what- Yeah, so Chip may ask for that to be evaluated, no different than what he did, so he needs to try that, if Chip asks for it.
Yeah, and when Chip comes out and visit with you guys, I'd like you, Ash, and Pat to be involved with those meetings with Chip.
Right, so we'll put the line from number
What time is that on the 26th then?
5:30.
5:30?
That's what I was told.
Okay, moving on, anything else on that? Moving on, item number 9 is IT services for city utilities. North Fiber Telco.
Yeah, we received a proposal from them. It looks very good, but at our council meeting, last council meeting, the council listed one more proposal from our local guy. So we're trying to get hold of him, but he's not available.
We asked the same thing, I mean, we asked for the same thing,
Yes,
if there's a proposal,
yes.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure his obligation to get a lot of stuff going, but if there's any, do we have to put that in the paper or?
No, we're just trying to get hold of him. Maybe he, like he said, he won't be having time. I will be presenting that issue again on the 26th.
So what all does this cover and do?
Computers go down, he
That's
comes
our
and fixes it,
IT,
so.
Mike.
What might do that?
Yeah, Mike.
Will
So
Mike
we'll
do
be
it?
able
So
to this-
Mike can do it?
I guess that's an argument.
He's not.
Yeah, so
Can
we'll
we
give
tell him
that.
that's the-
I just think right now, yeah.
So I mean, with these IT,
We don't.
with these IT services, it's more just like a break fix type of agreement. I mean, do we pay for, online services such as online antivirus or, the Microsoft 365 agreement? Or stuff like that, or-
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah.
How much did we pay Mike?
We get it from that split between city and.
An hour? A month, or sorry? So annually, it's a fixed amount, if it broke one time, we show her 100 times.
But that proposal is our.
This is hourly, so it could be a huge
Hourly, but it's
difference.
split city.
So is he still doing the same time in Dallas County?
I will talk to you. Okay.
Okay, anything else on that? We'll go to city administrator reports.
Okay, I'll make it quick and easy. Okay, we have the financial statement. At the first page of the financial statement, we have 7.2 cash on hand. Page 2, the months that we, from July 1st to the end of September, it shows a big loss, 910,000, but that's with the water project in consideration. Without the water project, it's a positive number of 343. Page 3, we still was in our budget is 10 million. We only spent 1.6, so we still was in the budget. Page 4 is just the month of September. Between the beginning and the ending, it shows a loss of 104,000. That's with the project. Without the project, it shows a plus number 117,000. The next page is a breakdown of our budget between sales tax, water, electric, insufficient fund, and customer deposit. Next page is a delinquent account, which we have 2 on the delinquent account shown on page 1 without saying names, but there's a check mark on the right hand. That takes us to the end of the report on page 3. We go to the next report, delinquent account, paid in full. We have only one will be shown on page 3 with a check mark on the right hand. And that leads us to the end of the report on page 4. The next report is the payment agreement. We have 4 people we added to it with the check mark on the right hand. The report after that is a pay in full payment agreement. We have 4 people will be shown on page 1, and 2 on page 2, 1 on page 3, and the last one was on page 3. That takes us to page 7, the end of the report. Next report is a budget billing, no change on it. Report after that, deceased and bankrupt, no change. Last report for your information only offset program and how much we collected so far. And that takes care of that report. Thanks.
Public forum. Pat, do you have anything?
Well, we covered a lot of ground in the meeting, I really don't have much to add.
Ben or Dustin? Dustin?
Good.
Okay. Anybody else?
I got a couple.
Brian does.
Okay,
Just
go
to
ahead.
ask about, overhead power lines on the north side of town. Is there a plan or to vary what's remaining?
Everything is now being run off of the buried.
That's ours.
Okay,
Yeah, so the old high voltage, some of it is still in the air and it's in the works to come down.
okay.
Yeah,
But so how does that get prioritized or like, I mean,
we have to have time.
okay,
With the project that's been going on this summer with between basically the water main project. And Dustin and Ben, they do a lot of that. You spend days and days just running a locator, finding stuff, so those guys.
When I've been driving by,
They don't hit
the
it.
only thing I can find is the bottom of a hole somewhere.
Yeah.
so this isn't something this is something we do ourselves. We work.
As far as, wrecking out that line and stuff like that.
Well, just like overhead power, do we bury those ourselves, we're not hiring that out?
We-
The ones we have left.
The north side, we did. And that's been done.
The only thing left overhead that's lying on the north side would be the services going to houses.
Mhm.
And then over time, that'll get buried, but it's not a.
It will, the difference was, the south side was done by our staff.
Right,
And but that was before the state came in and said, any changes you make to your electrical panel in the house has to be now inspected by a certified electrician.
gotcha.
And, when I had my wire buried 15 years ago, it cost me about $600. Now, just to get the certified electrician is about $1,000. So I've suggested a couple of ways that we could do that. Pat's kind of poo-pooed them, so.
No, I did not.
No, I know.
We can still talk about some of those.
There's some things I think we could do, but, the quicker we can get those underground, the better off the happier.
I just didn't know if it's something we did or hired out, or if that was on 3 or 5.
To actually bury the line to the house.
Well, linked to the house, I'm thinking of, like, if you look at where that sidewalk was poured from that grant from the school to the school. or school to the Catholic Church area. So, there was that pole from Corey Geisinger, and is it a personal pole that services his house?
No,
No, that's
No.
ours.
it's our pole.
Okay,
Yeah,
So-
it's a guy pole holding up a whole lot of other stuff right now.
so is that something that's overhead, and that's what you're talking about, will be underground at some point?
At some point, that'll just come down.
A lot of that is comm cable though.
Yeah.
You may be looking, thinking that that's power, and that's actually MediaCom and
Lot of
Sprint.
really,
I mean, it's, that run right there from the old Victory Bell all the way down there to, Strasser's old Doug's
So
rental.
we can't force them to put that underground.
They pay pole rental. I mean, they should. It would be in their best interest to update their system.
I didn't even know they ran anything above ground like that.
Well, there's like,
Oh,
They
yeah.
got a lot of it.
I think that
There's
particular,
one behind my house in the alley there.
That's above.
From North Third Street over to about the end of the Congregational parking lot there. There's a wire, the only wire that's out there, and there's a couple poles in the ground, is a MediaCom.
right there at Tissel's Corner, there's a duct buried in the ground that a lot of people don't even know about, but it runs from Tissel's Corner all the way up to Mary Morgan's Corner. And it carries quite a bit in it itself, but there's, I think from Cappy Tom's or the old Victory Bell over to Doug's rental, it's like 2 or 3 overhead comm. And then they split off and go down towards Alpha Mendelssohn's.
Gotcha.
And that's why that pole's gotta be there, is to carry that tension to the anchor, but
Gotcha.
I have one small item I can bother you with.
Sure.
Where the wind turbine is, the ground that we have around the wind turbine. Is there some way we can get that mowed, or is there somebody contracted to mow that?
Well, we have a guy that comes in and makes hay off of
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it.
probably done making hay this year.
He's probably done for the year. He's gotten 3 cuttings off of it this
Is that
year.
right? Hey,
And a 4th cutting is very,
well, you'd kill it.
well, yeah, you run the chance.
we don't own it up to the road though, if that's what you're.
We only own a portion of that there. We only own a couple acres there.
Okay.
There's a little bit of ground there that goes up to our ground that doesn't always get taken care of very well, but it's,
Well, I drove by the other day and it looks a little raggy, but if we're using, if somebody's using that for a hay field, we can't do anything with that.
No.
Mike, have you guys been told anything else about Carl's, are they going forward with their, building out there?
Haven't heard anything.
Have you heard anything else since,
You're talking about the support lot?
whatever that's called, Matt,
I haven't.
the detail,
I haven't really-
Carl there.
yeah.
I don't know what they.
Yeah, we got something today.
Yeah, they submitted their permit, it's gone to.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome, that's a great story.
I don't know.
You know, when they were going back and forth on that wind turbine, where to put it, it shouldn't be in the business park, people said that it shouldn't be in the business park, we're right. I mean, it's a business case, I'm sure both sides thought they were right at the time, that's something to, the city and utilities back then worked together.
Yeah.
The turbine was a good thing, but, they were looking at different locations, and, that business park, that land, you can't build that close to those, I was reading about it.
Yeah.
So that land.
I think it's like 250 feet.
Yeah, so I mean, that, Carl's blowing that place up, and so it's, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to look back on different opposing sides, and
Different subject with Carl, have we got any more pressure on getting them power for their EV chargers?
We
There was a transformer we had to get. didn't we?
we did, and Dustin and, everybody else helped. We changed it out one. Was it a Sunday morning? You did
Yeah,
it?
it's
So
August
that
20th,
much.
Sunday morning.
We put in a bigger transformer for them.
Oh, okay. So if they wanted to move ahead, they've got what they need to do that?
Well, if they start adding more chargers, it's good enough for what they have now. If they start adding more chargers, then it would have to
I
be,
think that's gonna happen.
I can't believe they would want any more, but
They don't have.
So you heard any more from the guy at the DOT?
We had that bigger one.
Maybe you or I should Why don't you email him and just get a status of what's going on, because we were supposed to get applications for that back in the spring.
Well, that's up to the board to decide whether you wanna make them pay for anything.
Yeah, we'll have to,
That was our,
well,
the way
and
it
it's one of
says
those things
now, it
where
was our expense.
they pay it and we pay them back over time. So, because that's usually the way we've done those transfers in the past.
And only assuming that Quick Star is still planning on coming and.
I think,
Everyone has stuff for
sometime
that.
next year, they're supposed to start.
Yeah, transformer
roller.
Okay, it's
March.
already heard from them. We're supposed to have the transformer for in December.
Okay.
April, I said. Yeah.
You got something else, Brian? It's early next year, so.
I can't wait.
So,
That chicken on
You mentioned these, there's some wires that are by one of our buildings. So, wires,
Mike Johnson's, there's wires near a pole, and Brad Wells, been there for years. Are those gonna be taken, the overhead gonna be taken down and up to his
well,
house?
that's what I was asking about, just generally on those, and that's,
Brad's asked me all the time, said, are those wires gonna be hooked up?
Are they wires to his house?
Well, they're running up the pole, I assume that they gotta take the overhead down.
the overhead, that's what I was asking.
And at Mike Johnson's funeral home, the same way.
Yep, that was on the list.
Is there a timeline?
Gotta have time.
Huh?
Gotta have time.
You were looking at one or two guys out there working on a daily basis, and when they get buried and doing other stuff, this stuff gets pushed aside. So once we get through these projects that we're doing right now, that'll free up some more time to actually get some of this done. And, yeah, it hasn't been forgotten about. We still talk about it, and we know it has to be done. There's only so much you can do. There's only so many hours in a day.
Of course, we can hire 5 or 6 more people.
Yeah, we can give you the locator.
So if Mike wanted to put it in the ground, that would be independent from the public. So if we put ours in the ground, it has to go in the ground, correct? So I mean, that has to be done in conjunction with each other. So Mike it's his funeral home?
Yeah, at the funeral.
So if he wanted to just do that, he could probably put his or bore his in the ground or whatever.
He's already underground.
He is already.
Okay, so it's above ground, that's the cities or the utilities,
Right,
that's
It's just-
running multiple places.
right. And that's gonna come down. It's just a matter of time.
What percentage on the north side is left?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know, what would you say, Dustin?
Ballpark.
Half
There's
the
about half.
houses, services are still overhead.
What works out pretty well is in the winter when you get some nice days and there's not a lot else going on, it's amazing how much wire you can take down. It's not like it takes a week or anything to take a block down. That can be done in a day.
But you can't do that piecemeal. If you start it, you gotta finish what you.
Well, and you gotta be careful what you take down first because some of it supports other stuff and then you end up with a domino effect and everything just goes down on you. And, so you gotta figure it out first, what you wanna take down first so that you don't have other stuff that it's supporting go with it. Because we have more than just guy wires out there holding stuff up. There's some of that line out there. If you went out there and cut some of that line down right now, you'd lose 2 blocks of line. It would just the poles and everything would just snap off. And it's all tight. You gotta take it down in a little bit at a time.
And how was that? I mean, did they just set that out for a 3-year period to do that or?
Yeah, it took years.
Okay.
They started that in like 98.
Yeah, it
We
took
took down the
years.
last overhead power in like 2012.
We just
chipped away at
finished that. The last of it was done about 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Like Alan Neal from the car wash to Alan Neal's present house was 2012. Chief Smith was still here at that time, but
It's a time consuming process. It really
Especially if
is.
you're doing it yourself.
Yeah,
And as far as some people with overhead lines, like if you've got, like my house, for instance, was updated, there are people who were updating their overhead services just a few years ago. So like they spent money, like Mike Johnson, for instance, spent money to put overheads in some of his houses he fixes up. So if you put up a new overhead and you do that cost, and then they tell you, hey, you have to put that underground,
Yeah,
cost.
don't wanna hit it twice.
Like, yeah.
Anything else? We stand adjourned.
John, I had something, I raised my hand earlier.
Oh. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I had a question on the old electric wire, this old utility building. You said the guy from Waukee, huh?
I was gonna talk to him after that. Pat.
But I want to know, can we get hold of Clayton or Marty Derry or something to move that junk wire at the building over here?
That's piled up.
You said Saul Grove, you've asked him and
He came and got it yesterday.
he what?
He came and got it.
Oh, it's all gone now?
Yeah.
Okay, I just said that, okay. And as far as the soccer complex, I've got 2 council people here and the utility. It's a slow process, I know, trying to get this stuff done. But 2022, we started trying to do the improvements. The trees got taken down, new trees got. Jim's working, possibly seeing where a drain is east of the football field to see if we can regrade that for parking. My question is, the bathrooms near the football field and the Claver field, is there a way we can see if water and electric is hooked up to there? Jim said they were, one of them's locked, but I said, well, you have to break in because the school has no keys anymore. So the person just got to break in, and I want to try to get the process going. Is there water to the building? Is there electric to those buildings?
There is not water.
There's not
We
water.
spoke about this, that old line
It's
had
shot.
leaks because we couldn't turn on Claver Field because we just had none. Don't know. This is that little
Little rest
bathroom,
yeah.
things like that. So we would have to get them hooked onto that 2-inch line that feeds the soccer, which means we have to find it because nobody knows where it is.
Okay, because Jim says he's got plans with Dustin to possibly put the 4 lights up eventually when they're painted. He said he could rent a trencher. Would that same trencher dig the water line, can it?
Yeah, we could work with Jim to, there's ways that we can locate that water line. It's a little labor intensive, but we can do it.
Okay.
But I think that, was he gonna verify if the sewer was good? That's what
Well,
kinda
yeah.
held us up, like, is
Yeah.
the sewer even good?
Well,
If
that's why I
the
asked.
sewer's no good,
Can
the
you
water
put
doesn't.
300 gallon of water in the toilet and see if it drains out near the soccer courts? So I'll
Ben,
work
is there
with
a
them.
locator line in that 2-inch line?
The only way we're gonna locate it is you have to do exploratory digging and just dig a huge trench till you find it, or
Oh,
you
you've
might
never
be able
done
to
that,
suck
have
it.
you?
We might be able to suck a rope through it and then pull a line in. So it's, I know we could find it, I just don't know how much work it's gonna take. But
Do you guys have your own boring machine? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay,
But I'd hate to bore another dedicated line just for that, because that was the problem, that sports complex is water lines running everywhere.
I know there's
No one
hydrants
knows
everywhere.
where they are, and no one knows what's good and what's bad.
If we do, let's put tracer lines on them. Okay, that's all I have.
What are you gonna use it for?
Huh?
You just want it open for the public?
Tim Young, he said there's enough people that's playing sports out there, and he said he liked that, and we got $150,000 designated for that whole area for improvements. And that's one of the things he had on the list. Try to fix them. Okay, thank you.
This is unusual for us, because this is a marathon meeting for us.
Actually, something in our budget discussion, can we talk about the cost to do?
Well, Pat and I talked.
I mean, outsource, I mean, hire him, just to know what that costs.
Oh,
Oh, I think I came up with a estimated cost a few months ago.
Okay.
And
my idea was